Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. We're going to keep going on that call. And Colby said that he prayed for her and Chad every day. And he said, no matter how much I want to hit your husband in his face with the shovel.
Yeah.
Do you remember that look he gave Chad in Rexburg?
Oh my goodness. It was the stank eye, stare you down.
You know what he gave Lori? From the time he got off the stand till he hit that door, the same look.
Oh, wow.
The exact same look. Lori did not stop looking at Colby. Likewise, she didn't stop looking at Summer. That was the two witnesses really that I saw she maintained eye contact with. Everybody else, it was sort of back and forth. Zulema, you could tell maybe there's still some feelings there, although she was married to Alex, and maybe that's the connection. What did you think about her not really letting them throw Alex or Chad under the bus? Were you surprised about that?
I was.
Yeah.
Alex, I think he made that comment to Zulema, right?
He did. I hope that they're setting me up to be the fall guy. And he said, either I'm a man of God or I'm not. Yeah. And I think that he murdered everybody other than Tammy. I mean, I think he murdered the kids. I'm not 100% convinced that he did it alone.
Yeah.
I'm curious if Chad goes to trial, I'm curious to see where his phone pings were at really crucial times, because that wasn't really anything that needed to come in this trial.
Yeah.
For Lori.
And yeah, I don't think anybody acted alone. I think there had to be at least two of them.
Mm-hmm. Did you hear the laugh on that phone call? With Colby?
No.
Oh, okay. So yeah, now that you got internet down here in the city, you're gonna have to hear it. She does this laugh. She laughs, and it's to me, it's just diabolical. And they're talking about when she says they think they know what happened, you weren't there, and then she starts laughing on the phone call, and it kind of shocked everybody because it was really quiet in there, and it was a very emotional phone call on Colby's end. And then you just hear this laugh, and we're all kind of looking around like, oh my gosh, like that sounds so evil. How can you even be laughing?
Sheesh.
You're in jail. Your kids are dead.
Yeah.
So
did she have a reaction to that being played?
When things got really embarrassing for her, she would kind of doodle in her notepad. That was sort of her go-to. By the end, at verdict, I sat 15 feet from her, directly to her side. And she had maybe a few little pieces of paper left. She had went through a whole legal pad. I don't know. She probably was writing us all light and dark. But
probably so.
Yeah. And then Colby said they were murdered, put in the ground. You walked away. Lori says that's not what happened. Lori says that God's on her side. And then what does he call Chad?
Peter Griffin.
Peter Griffin. He's like, you ran off the way with Peter Griffin. We were all snickering then. But he said, my siblings, my whole family, my dad, everyone is gone except for my mom, and you're in jail because of it. You ripped my heart out. You ripped everyone's heart out. So we know he gave her the stare down. And then Lori's attorney kind of turned this and asked if he loved his mother. And I thought, oh, wow. Okay, so we're going to do this. And he said, yeah. But what did Colby say when he was asked if he thought Lori loved him?
I think so.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Like, how sad that you even, that all this happened. And then I think she loves me.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm alive. Maybe. But you think about it. If Colby were 7, like JJ, and this happened, Colby wouldn't be alive.
No.
Although, I don't know. She had an obsession with Colby.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just, he always said it was more like a boyfriend, girlfriend. She treated him like a boyfriend and a son, which is disturbing.
Yeah.
So then we talked about Summer. Summer did look at Lori. Now, sometimes when this call was being played. And one thing that really struck me was, like, in the beginning, Summer says, I'm willing to listen if you're willing to talk to me. And in her voice, it was so many emotions just in that one sentence. Like, she said, if there's another explanation, I'm willing to hear it. And it's just like she was hoping that Lori would say, yeah, here's what really happened. And I'm not a monster. And, I didn't know. And there's nothing. It was almost like Summer was pleading, please, 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 just take this out of my head that I think you were in on this. And then she's like, do you know where they were? They can't be thrown away like garbage. And she called her out. You were dancing on a beach in Hawaii while your kids were in the ground. And Lori says something to the effect of, that was months later in that call.
I don't care if it's 10 years later.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, you played a role in your kids being dead.
Yeah. And then Lori just says it's her opinion. Like she's the Big Lebowski. It's just like your opinion, man. But Summer said we would have taken them. You could have done what you wanted. And that's the biggest question I don't think we'll ever have an answer to. Like you said.
Yeah. You wonder if in 5 years, 10 years, whatever, we'll have a sit down interview. What's the guy off Dateline?
Keith Morrison.
Yeah. He'll go interview Lori in prison and she can shed light on anything that was, if she'll come to her senses.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'd love to, they interviewed somebody who had been in jail with her, and she said that she was playing sock puppets in her cell, like sock puppets. I mean, jail make you lose your mind, I guess, but still sock puppets. But then Lori says you have no idea because everyone sees what's on TV. She had been in isolation for a couple of months prior to this call, apparently, because she says that in the phone call. And Summer's like, this isn't TV. This is our conversation. So you see that, like, remember early on, somebody had been in jail with her very early on, and she got excited when her story came on the TV.
Yep.
Do you remember that?
Yep.
Just hit me. Then one thing that Summer said that really surprised me, you didn't tell me Alex died, which I'm glad he's gone. If he's a part of this, I thought that was a really big thing.
Yeah.
Speaking of Summer, they kind of clustered in the family. Now, Ian was brought in later. Melanie was in that courthouse. She didn't testify.
Yeah.
I was blown away.
I was shocked at that.
Well, they came in and said that maybe she had been exposed to like some pre-trial or some trial publicity. And now David Warwick, who was Melanie Gibbs' still husband, by the way, because she confirmed on the stand, they were not divorced or separated. They're still married. He listened to her testimony to make sure she was okay, right? So I was like, oh boy, they're not gonna let him testify. I think his testimony is important because he literally says, like, I saw JJ on Alex's shoulder, and then the next morning we know JJ's dead. And they let him in. So I thought, well, so they bring Ian on the stand and they're like, well, okay, so what did she do? And he's like, well, her ex-husband testified, Brandon did, who, by the way, is just tortured about this. You can tell it is still so deep. I mean, he was nearly victim number 5.
Oh, yeah.
So lucky.
Yeah.
By the way, what did you think about Melanie's acknowledging her kids were dark?
That was shocking.
Yeah.
If I was Brandon, I'd be like, what? This is why I was hiding.
Yeah. Yeah. That blew me away. That was one thing during the course of all this that I was like, what? Holy moly. Like, she knew what was going to happen. Lori said, I'm upset about it. She knows this is part of the mission or part of the plan. And I don't remember verbatim. But in other words, it was kind of insinuated Melanie knew what happens to zombies. People are wondering whether or not she is going to face charges for Brandon. And I think it's going to depend on digital evidence. What do they have?
Yep.
That's going to be it.
Yep.
But you think nobody else knew other than a few of his close friends where he was living.
Yeah.
He'd only been there a very short while. But then you look at, we knew there were texts about Charles with Chad, but then Chandler decided not to prosecute Chad because they said there's not a chance of conviction.
Yeah.
So even though she knew that address, maybe that's not enough. I'm curious to see. Do you think anybody else will be arrested for anything?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, Melanice is my only question, but like you said, if it depends on the evidence they have or whatever, I don't see anybody else outside of that.
I think that's kind of where I'm at too.
Yeah.
Unless Chad caught a charge for Brandon.
Yeah.
But I'm saying outside, like Melanie Gibbs, Ulema, I just don't think there's enough there.
No.
The one person I have to say was Audrey Bertiero. So she totally minimized her role on the stand of what she believed and did, because after she was off the stand, it was revealed that she was inquiring about Tammy, and she used that emoji with the X's for the eyes, which kind of indicates death when referring to Tammy. So she also said Lori threatened to kill her, and she was terrified of Fruit Loop.
Yeah, and that was a big thing, wasn't it? Well, you didn't testify to that at the grand jury or something.
Right. Yeah.
But I can understand if you're scared. Well, you see these people dropping like flies.
It's true. But I was also really surprised. And I always said she called Audrey when she was in that Walgreens right after Charles was murdered. So like, why would she call Audrey of all people? She was closer to Melanie Gibb or Zulema, even Zulema, because they were doing more of the casting sessions together and things like that. And then you find out she calls Audrey, and then you find out because later Audrey's like, where's Tammy at now? And it's like the dead eyes, just insanity. So I just thought that Summers, it was one of the few times that I saw genuine emotion come from Lori while she was on the stand. She looked sad. She cried. She had a lot of emotions seeing her sister. I think it was more of the family. When she saw people that she was related to, you saw the emotion more than photos of her kid.
Mm.
It just, it just blew your mind. During Zulima's testimony, she had a journal that she had been keeping where she was writing down these notes about like the demonic entities and kind of these light and dark scales and that kind of thing. And two of the ways to keep a demon out of a body was by binding and burning. Do you think that was coincidence?
No, it's part of what they believe, and
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Yeah.
it's sick.
It is. And you think, because honestly, when I went to this trial Fruit Loop, I never really thought it was like money, sex, and power, but I think it's money, sex, and power and this wackadoodle belief system they had and a lot of other things. There's not like one reason all this happened. I think there was so much. It was like a buffet. There's so many things on the table that I don't think anyone took precedent over the other.
Yeah.
I really feel like it was all equal in the lust, the money, the power, the delusions of grandeur that Lori had for herself, and Chad fed that to her. But do you feel like the prosecution did a good job of making Lori seem just as culpable?
I think so.
Manipulative?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so, because I think she was. I mean, we saw that early on.
Mhm.
Well, we saw that with Joe Ryan, right? And
Yeah.
we don't know prior relationships or marriages before that, how all that happened, or what went on there. But we went through all that stuff and saw, I'm just being honest, evil.
It really is evil. The binding and the burning was a big revelation. I remember more of us that knew the case more than the journalists or the jurors were like, whoa.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. So now we're seeing the binding and the burning. Chad said he'd been the brother of Jesus. And one thing that Zulima said is that he would have been spiritually the highest of anybody. He had chosen Lori to be his wife and told her they had been married several times in a past life. So do you remember on Sins of Our Mother, April Raymond talking about Lori wanting a spiritual equal and Charles wasn't it? Charles was a convert to the church.
Yeah.
So he joined the church because Lori was LDS. And that really was a small detail to me. But then when Zulima said that he was higher and the spiritual equal part hit me because April Raymond felt like maybe the divorce, she knew way back when they lived on the island that Charles wasn't her spiritual equal and it bothered her. So then you see in her mind, like she meets Chad and then it's like, hey, I was Jesus's brother. And this is like, first of all, you believe that crap, number one. But then it's like, oh, by the way, you're going to help usher in the second coming of Christ.
Yeah.
And she ate it up and ran
Oh,
because
yeah.
that was everything Charles could never do.
Mhm.
Charles, when you're, I think when you're new to a religion, if you're like converting, you got to have a grace period there where you got to learn the ins and outs of how things work. Chad was there. He would, and then I don't know. I almost feel like Lori bought it more than Chad ever did.
Yeah, but then you think and you hear the testimonies and everything that he would come up with this thing and then Lori would tell Melanie Gibb or whoever. It was like a relayed thing. I think he could have told Lori anything.
It's true. And then there were times where Chad would seek confirmation from Lori. I'd read this stuff before, but it never really stuck out to me until the prosecutors pointed that out. Like there are times where he's asking her to validate him. So you see, he's given her that little bit of power, but I don't feel like anybody was driving the bus more than the other. I think it was very much 50-50. Zulima talked about the casting. She doesn't believe that stuff anymore. She said they made it up. And ultimately, she said that 2 kids and a mom of 5 were killed, and that was evil. And I get that. She looked very embarrassed on the stand. I think Zulima, more than anybody, really looked ashamed for what she had done because they're talking about these text messages with her and Lori. We had the whole text message series.
Yeah, we read through all that stuff.
Lord have mercy.
Yeah.
And she was very much a participant in trying to use like spells to have JJ and Charles crash. And then you're having to say that in front of JJ's grandparents and admit and Charles's sister and brother-in-law that you tried to kill him with your magic powers. Does it not blow you away that these people have no clue that like what they believe at the time? It's like,
thinking?
how can you even get one person to believe it? For Charles, Lori had told Zulema that an evil spirit had been following Charles around for a couple of years so he could learn everything about Charles and then possess him. I mean, I'm not laughing, but it blows your mind.
Mm-hmm.
I could sit here all night and talk about how in the world these people believe this stuff.
It's not being grounded in your faith and knowing exactly what you know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's if you're not grounded in anything, if you're not educated on something, some people believe anything somebody tells them, whether it's truth or not. It doesn't have to be truth. They just have to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's hard.
And what's crazy is how they were all just right there together.
Mm-hmm.
Like church, because Zulema and Melanie Gibb went to the same ward. So they were in church actively and they're doing the splinter stuff. So it makes you wonder. So we'll move on to Tammy Daybell. Well, one thing that was actually kind of funny, Lori would very much shake her head yes and no when she agreed with the witness. So Zulema said that Chad and Lori at one point, when they went to Hawaii, they ghosted her. Lori turns to her attorney. She was like, I wasn't ghosting. Or she was like, no, I didn't. She really would react to things with her attorneys. And it was crazy because, 20 seconds after seeing a graphic photo, she'd be laughing and leaning back in her chair, laughing. You see what I'm saying? It's just very bizarre. So Tammy Daybell, I was surprised here, to be honest, that they essentially labeled her death asphyxiation because the autopsy was benign. It was negative. Like there was nothing they could find. So it's really the absence of breath. So you could see maybe where Chad's kids got convinced on that 2020 interview where, it just means absence of breath, because essentially that's what the medical examiner testified to. Now, her photos were not it's disturbing knowing what we know, but she had just been murdered. And so there wasn't any decomposition.
Gotcha.
And so the foam running down her cheek was more, it was not a pink foam to me unless my color's off. It was red. It looked bloody. But it was very bizarre to see, like her head was 2 feet down the pillow. And then you have these conflicting stories. Do you remember on the AVAL message board where Chad said he woke up and it was clear to him that her spirit had slipped away during the night?
Peacefully. Yeah.
Now we got the story that she rolls out of bed after she's dead. Because that happens, right? Dead bodies just roll out of bed.
Yeah.
He said her legs were twisted in the sheets, and then he had Garth come and help lift. I don't know what Garth saw. I can't imagine your mom, or you got Alex at this church 2 miles away. We don't know where his phone was. He could have left his phone in the car and been picked up. And that's why Chad, that's the only reason I hope Chad would go to trial, is so we can have some of these things explained. Where was Chad at crucial times? Where was his phone pinging? Because Chad was a moron. Although Alex was a bigger moron than anybody because he had his phone in his pocket every time they were doing something murderous.
Yeah.
Sportsman's Warehouse, it's got him literally at each downfield range where he's dialing in his scope to go murder Tammy. And then Brandon, what did you think about the mask and the pants and the gloves being bought that day that Tammy shot at?
Yeah, that and what was it? They found hazmat suits.
Oh yeah, they had the white suits. Yeah, I forgot about that. And it was, that mask was creepy when they put it up on the screen. So that was the day of. But April Raymond said also at one point, Lori said that she was done with JJ and that Charles and his sister Kay would have to figure it out. Why didn't she just do that? So moving on to some more. Now I have to say, Tammy's sister Samantha was so sweet. She had on an R2D2 little backpack. So you can tell, I'm sure they had a lot of fun when they were kids, but man, her heart was broken. Americans spend an average of 90% of their time indoors. According to the EPA, indoor air could be 2 to 5 times more polluted than outdoor air. And in some cases, it could be 100 times more polluted. We take about 20,000 breaths per day. That's almost 3 gallons of possibly polluted air. Airborne allergens are the most common allergy triggers, such as pollen, pet dander, dust mites, and mold. Look, I love my animals, but they make me sneeze. But since I've been using Air Doctor, I don't have to take my allergy medicines, and I see a huge decrease in the amount of dust in my house. That's a win-win. What's the solution? Air Doctor filters out dangerous contaminants and allergens so your lungs don't have to. Air Doctor uses an ultra HEPA filter that's been independently tested to remove 99.99% of tested bacteria and viruses. The classic Air Doctor 3000 purifier is powerful enough to circulate the air in a 630 plus square foot room 4 times per hour. And the Whisper Jet fans are 30% quieter than the fans in ordinary air purifiers. So, Air Doctor comes with a no questions asked 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you don't love it, just send it back for a refund minus shipping. So head to airdoctorpro.com and use promo code WhatTheWorld. And depending on the model, you'll receive up to 39% off. And her husband stayed in a lot, I think, that rest of that day that she testified. So getting to the kids' bodies, this is really, I have to say, it's disturbed me in ways I never have been disturbed doing what we do. The description, we knew kind of how the condition of the kids' remains would be due to Chad's preliminary, and we had a lot of these guys testify in a very basic way. So it does show you at a preliminary how they really keep out crucial things, just enough to get it bound over, but nothing prepared me for seeing these kids' bodies.
No, I bet not.
So Detective Hermosillo, he said, and this is a trigger warning, if you're sensitive, you may want to fast forward, gobs of flesh falling apart. Below that was another glob, burnt flesh, bone, in a melted green bucket. Her heart and lungs were still connected, although they were shrunk from decomposition and fire, I guess. But the flesh and bone was stuffed in that melted bucket. We had Special Agent Steve Daniels with the FBI. What was crazy was they took pictures from different vantage points inside Chad's house. Chad slept upstairs. So they showed a photo looking out from Chad's bedroom to the burial sites, then from the kitchen and places like that. And you think,
showing every day he was there, he could see where they were.
And you know what's so eerie to think about is how much Tammy Daybell loved kids, and she had no clue what was in her backyard. So it was really graphic. They found that her necklace, Tylee's necklace, was in the fire pit, and it was that Pura Vida. So it's like that little wave. My girls went through that phase too, where they had them, and the charm was found like 20 feet away in the grass. Her necklace in the fire pit. So Detective Hermosillo talked about they hit this really hard piece of earth, and they thought maybe it was like cement. They didn't know, and they go to pick it up and it falls apart. It's Tylee. It's Tylee. They had to go on their hands and knees and literally sift to find Tylee's remains.
That's horrible.
Oh my gosh. He said they could only do it for a couple of minutes at a time because of the smell of burnt flesh, decomposing flesh, and the accelerant, which I believe was gasoline. They ended up and had to use like paintbrushes and small tools. And Hermosillo said eventually we uncovered bits and pieces of Tylee, or who we assume was Tylee. Now, one thing too that kind of surprised me is that they did find that one of her femur bones had been scavenged, like chewed on by animals, which, how? If she was buried, how did that? I mean, it's just, I don't know. Tylee wasn't shot in those townhomes. Tylee wasn't bludgeoned in those townhomes. You would find evidence of that. My theory is maybe they did to her what they did to JJ. Maybe go in there when she's asleep and bind her up. Because Tylee was an adult, essentially adult size. You know, she's full grown at almost 17 for the most part. She could fight back, unlike JJ, who was very much smaller. And my theory is that they did the same thing to Tylee. They bound her. And then whatever they did, maybe suffocated her. I don't know. But they only found a partial human skull underneath that green bucket. It was very eerie to see. And then they found like eye sockets and things like that. Never found her hands or feet. But he said the best way I can describe was just blobs of flesh that were falling apart. Once we removed some of that, under that was another round of blobs. And he said, I'm sorry, that's the best I can describe it as. Just burnt flesh. And he said the bucket was melted, so it was kind of deformed. And you could see that bucket under the dirt, under that hard layer that's Tylee. It's like you've got this solid mass, and then you see that green bucket peeking out. And it's just, you know that that's Tylee, and you go online and you see videos of her like singing and playing with JJ, and then you think, that is that person. The one thing that really, really bothered me was with JJ's remains, the scratches on his neck
Mm.
and the bruising on his arms. Same with Tammy Daybell. They both had bruises consistent with being held down.
Mm.
So you have to wonder, Tammy had to have woken up.
Yeah. And tried to fight a little bit,
Yeah.
right?
Can you imagine seeing your husband you have 5 kids with and grandkids with, like, smothering you to death? I mean, you think about what these 3 went through the last few minutes of their life because
Mm.
we know none of them were drugged.
Mm.
JJ had that tiny, tiny, tiny amount of the date rape drug in his toxicology. However, that comes from liver samples. It's commonly found in decomposition. So it was a trace amount. It was not a big amount. So unfortunately, I think all 3 of them knew what was happening.
And that's what's horrible.
Oh, I just can't even. Then we find out that the funeral home call was played. Now, John Pryor was there most of the trial. There were very few days I didn't see him there. And that gives him an advantage, I think. He
Oh,
really
yeah.
would watch that jury
Yeah.
when certain things were being testified to or played in court to see their reaction. And
Yeah.
I can't imagine that he would tell Chad, this is a great idea to take a trial. What do you think? Do you see Chad pleading down? I mean, not pleading down, but, the death's on the table is a bargaining chip.
Yeah. Honestly, it could go either way because is he going to admit he's not a higher power and whatever? Or is he saying, oh my goodness, I'm just going to plead guilty because I'm not sitting through that?
Yeah. It's embarrassing stuff. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it's cringy to have this, what really seems like a text from maybe a 14-year-old boy.
Yeah.
It's just how they communicated, and it really came off as disgusting.
Yeah.
To sit and actually, like, see that on a screen and then go through. There were 15,000 texts they weeded through just to bring the ones into this. Can you imagine what we haven't seen? Can you imagine? It's gotta be just insane. So we're almost done here, but you find out these little things like 90 communications on the day Tammy Daybell was shot at, and none of those were retrieved. So there's your smoking gun right there.
Mhm.
As far as like your evidence that there was a direct conspiracy, but they still got her on all charges. Doesn't it seem weird that her trial's over and she's been found guilty of it all? I mean, it seemed like we would never
Yeah.
get here.
Yeah. It's like, oh wow, we've spent all this time and we didn't speculate, but thinking, could it be this? Could it be that? What happened here? What happened there? Doing all this stuff, and then now you're like, oh,
I mean, it's a relief.
yeah.
I still feel like we don't know the whole story,
Mhm.
and we never will because they'll never fess up to what really, like, every little thing they were thinking or doing. But it is very weird to be done with it. Like it is not done. We've got Chad's trial potentially to go. Although I really do think maybe if the prosecution agreed to take death off the table, I don't think John Pryor can do anything but tell Chad to take that and run.
Yeah.
Because Lori, we've always heard the case against Chad was actually stronger than Lori.
Mhm.
So if she's convicted on all counts, it's odds are he's going to be found guilty too, and then he's got death to contend with. I'm curious if his kids have all changed their mind. I've heard a couple before trial had maybe been moving away from supporting Chad. But do you think, the thing that I always like to remind people of is that interview was done before the document dump ever happened.
Yeah.
So all they had was Chad's word and the man that they were raised by. And then we get the document dump and then we don't hear from them again. Now you've got this trial where a lot of other stuff has come out. You have to wonder, does he have any support in his family now with his kids?
I don't see how you can.
I don't know. Yeah, I know. Right. Because they were just saying he was set up,
Mhm.
that he had been framed. And that's a hard pill for them to swallow. I don't envy those kids at all.
Mm-mm.
None of these people, even Janice Cox, Summer, Colby, Annie Cushing, Chad's kids, Chad's in-laws, none of them asked to have this put in their lap. But here it is. And the saddest part is it's so big and it's so devastating that it'll never go away. This will be their reality until their last day.
Yeah.
Because they didn't choose it. It was put on them, but it's just so huge.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be huge. We've covered cases with one victim where, it affects so many people. But I just really, the day that she didn't want to sit in there, that morning we
Oh
had
my
seen
goodness.
crime scene photos.
I was like, shut up.
Yeah, sit your little booty down, girl. You're
Mhm.
going to look at all of it.
Mhm.
So that day, she came back from lunch and I turned to Lauren Mathias from Hidden True Crime and I said, she's legit been crying. There were times we would see her wipe her eyes. We weren't close enough to see if there were tears. And I thought, oh boy, here we go. And now this trial's going to get paused or something.
Mhm.
Something's going to happen. These poor families are going to have to go home. And it was just, well, she would like to waive her right to be here today or her appearance today. And Judge Boyce was like, yeah, not going to happen.
No.
She's going to sit here.
Sit in here
So
and
then
listen.
all the bailiffs go in the back. So there's a door right near where Judge Boyce sits to, if you're looking at Judge Boyce to the left, that goes back, I guess, towards chambers and to the back of the area. Lori's in there. Her attorneys are in there. The prosecution's in there. All the bailiffs go in there. Bet you $100 they force medicated her.
Something.
Because that was the one day she was like this.
Oh, the rest of the time.
30 minutes later, she was either had her head down and played the best game of, let's sit still and be quiet that I've ever seen, or she was asleep.
The quiet game?
Yeah, I tried to get that with my kids. Who could be the stillest and the quietest? Never worked.
No.
Because
You always got the one who's going to say, I moved. I lose.
Right. I don't care.
I don't care.
I lost.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was not happy that day. And then she was not happy at closings when they threw Chad under the bus. Because Archibald said, he got some laughs out of the jurors out of this one too, where this was on cross-exam of Audrey Bertiero. He said, well, he told you he's the brother of Jesus, blah, blah, blah. Did he ever say like in 1700, I was born a loser? And she's like, no, he never said that. So some of the jury was laughing, but she was not happy that they did throw Chad under the bus. It was more, and it wasn't even a full on throw him under the bus. It was just, let's just sort of nudge him out in traffic under the bus.
Yeah.
Because he had to. And people are like, well, she didn't get any defense. And I'm like, she didn't give him a choice.
Mm-hmm.
No mental illness. They came in only after Mark Means was removed from the case, after she was out of the mental hospital. And then no mental illness comes in, no insanity defense in Idaho. And by the way, don't throw my dead brother or my husband of 50 worlds under the bus.
Yeah.
What could they do? Nothing. They had no, and I think Archibald was like, got to do this in closings, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Got to do something, some kind of a defense, really just nudged along the lines of essentially, her kids were never dead until Chad Daybell came on the scene. So it was interesting. Fruit Loop, I'd have given anything for you to sit in there with me because it just to be in the same room with her is so surreal.
Oh, I bet so.
She looks at you and smiles, and she looks unassuming. If I didn't know her and what she had done, I would think, okay, well, she's just smiling.
Yeah.
Normal
person.
Yeah. And then you see these pictures of these babies and Tammy and Charles. We've seen the crime scene photos there. And then you think, my gosh, this woman allowed this to happen.
Yeah.
So what's up now? Pre-sentencing investigations happening. She'll be sentenced probably within 3 months or so. And then they'll start the extradition process to Arizona for Charles and Brandon. So she's facing 3 life sentences here in Idaho, or there. I keep saying here, there in Idaho. And then you're looking at 25 to life in Arizona for those. They don't have, it's not a death penalty case in Arizona for the conspiracy. People are like, well, why even bother? Because Charles and Brandon deserve their justice too.
Oh yeah.
Charles had his life taken while trying to scream with everything but a megaphone saying she's crazy. She's lost her mind. And nobody listened. Yeah. And then Brandon, thank goodness, he would have been number 5. And I think we would have had 4 more victims being their kids because they did not want the kids at all. Lori told April Raymond, hey, you've served your purpose with your kids. They're 10 and 12. Leave them with their dad and come with me. And April's like, I'm good. I'm going to stay here in Hawaii. You go do your thing.
Yeah.
So you see, it was a no kid thing. Anyways, there's just not enough words to wrap up. No. And there is no wrapping up because we're going to learn things if Chad goes to trial that we didn't learn in this trial that has to do with her. And then for Charles and Brandon, remember how much of that stuff was redacted?
Oh, yeah.
Out of Chandler and Gilbert?
It's like just a black sheet.
Yeah. So we have a lot more to go with Lori. I could not ask for a better jury, Fruit Loop. You'd have been so proud. Like, they were so focused. Even on the days where it got a little monotonous, where they're explaining how cell phone towers work, like they were writing notes nonstop. And I just want to shout out Judge Boyce for letting us have laptops. I love me some Judge Newman and Murdoch, but I'm going to tell you right now, freehanding that whole trial for 6 weeks, I still got writer's cramp. We were all tapping. They were real funny because sometimes you had keyboard warriors who would get moved back because they were so loud typing. There were a few. I think Nate Eaton actually got moved back because he was banging away on his keyboard. But it's interesting. All these people that we've grown to love and respect over the years, like Nate and Justin Lum and To be able to sit and talk about the case with him in person was amazing. And everybody was like, tell Fruit Loop we love her and we miss her. You would not believe how many people miss you. But at the same time, every single person that said that said, but she's doing what she's meant to do.
Mm.
And it's weird because, we knew it was time. We knew it was time for you to do your thing.
Yeah.
And if we'd have forced this and kept going, you have already housed women.
Yeah.
One of those women could be a headline.
Yeah.
So, it's not that this is your last time ever on this podcast. Anytime there's Lori stuff, Chad stuff that's huge, we're going to come back and share this podcast. I want to be able to use this podcast to help your mission, to help that grow and enable that to come to fruition, because you guys have just scratched the surface and it's already amazing. So I'm so proud of you because I literally haven't talked to you very much for almost a year because you've been working it. You have been absolutely just making sure on a very basic level, there's safety in the middle of nowhere for these women that need a place to stay, or that you're available for that man that calls.
Yeah.
And you say, hey, we'll put you in a hotel. So again, guys, if you're so inclined, please donate to Channel Missions. I'm going to put the link in the description. It's a wonderful thing what they're doing up there. I've seen it firsthand. Coming up next Saturday for a little birthday party, maybe a little s'more roast. So we'll post some pictures. But guys, it's really special what her and Brienne are doing, and your cousin Joe. Yeah. So it's huge, Fruit Loop. And I think that, you do all this hard work and you save one life. Like, it's worth every long hour you've worked up there clearing land or doing whatever you've done. Yeah. And there are needs you have that this facility has. Yeah. Got to have.
Yeah, we do. We continue to fundraise. We don't have any grants or anything right now, so we're strictly raising money and going on donations. It costs us about $10,000 a month to run and do what we do. So donations are huge. If you know companies, corporations, whatever, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, totally tax deductible. So that's our big need. We can share some list of stuff. You guys have been awesome in buying bedding and mattress covers and all kind of stuff. You guys have been awesome at sending and donating. We lost our Amazon wish list because Amazon did away with it, right? So we don't have that anymore, which was awesome because we could just share that and you could, get what you wanted. But reach out to us social media and let us know if you want to help or know of anybody that can help or whatever. So
yeah. So, and if anybody has any questions, you can inbox me and I'll forward it to Fruit Loop and Brienne and let them figure out what they need. But they have some big needs and they have some small needs. And so every penny helps. And
yeah, so it's funny. So we don't have air conditioning.
Oh, wow.
We don't have air conditioning or heat, but we're in the mountains, so it's not too bad yet. But so we do have, we're trying to get some donations to get some AC installed before the bad summer hits.
Well, that's important because you guys deal with women who have had children. You have women up there sometimes maybe that could be pregnant this summer.
Yeah.
If you get somebody in there who's maybe expecting a child, they need to be comfortable. And you can be in the mountains in South Carolina. Girl, we've hiked these mountains and it can be in the middle of July and you could be at the tallest peak and you still sweat. And so, if we could start chipping away at that, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
So we will put all the links in the description. Don't go through me, just go directly through Channel Missions. And I appreciate it. Maybe we'll just have this big celebration episode where you guys get your AC.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Awesome.
And then in the meantime, it's just, you keep doing what you're doing because you're saving lives.
Yeah.
And you can't do anything more productive with your life than save the life of another. Yeah. And that's what you guys are doing. And you're sacrificing your life, really just the normalcy to be in there on site with these victims to make sure, number one, they're safe and also that they're getting the counseling and the help that they need. So you've given up a lot of your life to do what you do because you're passionate about it. So hats off. And I can't wait to update everybody when this goes through the roof and just like miracles are happening financially for this awesome thing. And you think about one, was it 1 in 4?
1 in 4 women. Yeah. 1 in 9 men.
That's, you take 4 women that you know and line them up, statistically, one of them have been a victim of domestic violence.
Yeah.
Or you take 1 in 9 guys. That is a scary statistic, but we see it all too much due to crime.
Yeah.
It ends in murder a lot of times. And if not, it ends in a cycle where a little baby's raised in that, and then they become the abuser or the abused, or maybe they get out of it, but still it's crazy.
Yeah.
To think.
Yep. And that's our program. We want to get to the root of it, and we want to help these ladies and these men heal so they can go back into society and be effective and be okay.
Right. And not easy to fall back into the same routine.
Yep.
You're giving them not only like the physical means to get away, but also the emotional tools to stay away.
Yeah.
And that's what's important.
Yeah. And I want to say the women we take in, they don't pay a dime.
Right.
So our process, our resourcing is finding them a job and things like that so they can, buy their own food and things like that, but they don't pay anything.
Right. This is all a free service. This is just a get out of there. And you don't have to worry that you can't afford to leave. So anyways, guys, what an awesome feeling to have resolution in this case. And then just for us to be together again, because I don't get to see you much anymore. It's like, but our lives have done that at times where you moved to West Virginia and you were gone for a few years and I barely talked to you.
Yeah.
But it's like the minute we get back together, it's like, okay, cool. Right. It's been yesterday.
Yeah.
So this is your home. You will always be the other half of Pretty Lies, because if it weren't for you, I would have never done this on my own.
Well, look at you though, what you're doing. Being on there with Duty Ron, he's so cool.
Duty Ron's awesome.
Yeah.
It's been crazy, but you're doing your passion, I'm doing mine. And so we can't go wrong that way. But if my passion can help yours and yours can help mine, then it's still really just a beautiful partnership.
Yeah.
All right, Fruit Loop. It has been amazing sitting here and talking to you about this case. I haven't got to talk to you much about it because you're up in the boonies saving people's lives with a bad signal. So it's been nice to have some resolution in this case with you guys. Link in the description for channel missions. And until next time, we will be back together at some point and hopefully with some really good news about some air conditioner. All right, we'll see you soon.